Hello, and welcome to the podcast, The Council of the Whills. We will be talking about the resistance plot in The Last Jedi today in our continuing episodes on The Last Jedi. I'm Jen.
I'm Jane.
I'm Amber.
All right, so the whole resistance, I guess, B plot of The Last Jedi, which starts the movie of everybody trying to escape, and then Poe doing his own thing and showing that he is the go-to guy. He will go and get the things done and regardless of orders, basically.
What a brash young pilot.
But
I like him.
it fits with his character, though. It plays a bit into the Poe Dameron comics, where he's portrayed as much more fanatical and a lot less like suave and witty and always right. That Poe has these character flaws of being extremely fanatical and doing whatever it takes, where the ends justify the means, even if that isn't necessarily the right choice. And we see that where he ignores Leia and gets half the fleet killed.
Idiot.
It's true though. Like you see him, he's like, "I did the thing. I took out the dreadnought. We got it. Yay!" And Leia's just like, "Yes. Look at how many people died because you decided to take out one ship. It's a big ship. It's important that you took it out, but the ends right now do not justify the means."
Which is, ironic in that sort of way, which, yes, Leia is totally right in demoting him and telling him that he messed up, but you kind of get this weird sort of like, well, Poe was kind of right, because if he hadn't taken out that dreadnought would have destroyed them the second they tracked him into hyperspace.
Which I think is actually
Exactly.
I think it's part of why this is so interesting, because a lot of people have been debating, like, was Poe right? Was Poe wrong? Did Leia make a bad call? Did Poe make a bad call? Did Holdo make a bad call? But I think it's just the culmination of no one having the ability to see the future and
Yep.
the realities of war, that sometimes you lose. And it's how you recover from losing that will determine it. And I mean, they lose. I mean, that's the Last Jedi. They get their asses kicked and they lose.
Not to bring Star Trek into this, but doesn't Picard at some point say that you can do everything right and still fail?
I think so.
I think so. That sounds like a Picard thing to say.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's kind of, the lesson here, in the sense that, and not to kind of jump to the conclusion of this podcast or anything like that, but I really feel like the entire message of the movie was failure. And so in that way, everyone's stories kind of had to fail. And I think that's illustrated most clearly by the Resistance plot, which I really enjoy. I didn't really care for the Resistance side of the plot when I first saw the movie. I felt like it dragged, and I felt like it didn't have too much purpose. And then the more I thought about it, the more I really kind of paid attention to what story was being told. I was able to develop a brand new appreciation for it, and I really love it now.
It definitely it has its highs and its lows, because I think some of the best parts of The Last Jedi were with the Resistance plots, and specifically when Holdo basically does her kamikaze mission. I thought that was
Oh,
just
so good.
so beautiful. But it also kind of was like, are we there yet? No. Are we there yet? No. With everything that happens on Canto Bight. And we talked a little bit about this in our previous episode, but Canto Bight, I agree with the message, and I agree with what the director is trying to say and what's being portrayed, but it dragged at moments. It was like, oh my goodness.
I'm not gonna lie. So the third time that I saw The Last Jedi, I was definitely sick. Like, probably should not have gone, but I did anyway. Took Mucinex and went and was like, I'm gonna do this because it was a thank you for doing an event or whatever. I'm like, this is gonna be fine. And I fell asleep during Canto Bight. I feel bad, and at the same time, I totally fell asleep during Rogue One every single time I saw it too. So it's the third time, The Last Jedi, where I get, like you said, I get what they tried to do with Canto Bight. I think it was done well. I'm like making shrugging motions that nobody can see.
My problem is I keep I always go to the movies like after work, and since I wake up at 4 a.m. to go to work, I'm always exhausted when 3 p.m. rolls around and it's time for the movie because, I've been up all day already at 3 p.m. And so I feel like I definitely struggle to stay awake in some places. I'll admit though, like, I kind of fall asleep during like scenes that Adam is in, but that's just because he has a really soothing voice and I like to pretend he's like talking me to sleep.
um,
But like, but that's more of like some like thirsty bitch sort of thing than like the movie isn't intriguing. Um, I think the thing that's really like kind of renewing my interest in Canto Bight is trying to actually see all of the creatures that were created. And just like looking at all the production design, like so much went into those scenes, and it just kind of sucks that like narratively they're not as exciting, and that is kind of unfortunate because I don't know. How do I phrase this? I appreciate what we get out of Canto Bight. I appreciate that we see that people are getting rich in this galaxy off of war, just like in our own world. I appreciate that we get Rose's backstory in the sense that we see how the First Order really treated her family, and I see like her cynicism as far as nice things like that go, like why she prefers to be like a little more simple. Like I enjoy the things we get out of the story, and I just feel like the dots are connected in such a strange way. And man, I really hope Justin Theroux comes back in episode 9, like as the actual Master Codebreaker doing something, because I really love Justin Theroux, and when we first started like theorizing about what role he could possibly play, I really wanted it to be bigger, and for some reason I kept imagining like a different character for him, like a nerd, but like the James Bond type is so interesting to me that I would really love to see more of that, but I don't know. I guess it was probably just a cameo.
But it would be interesting, say they bring him back in the next movie as sort of the, well, you aren't getting where you need to go as the resistance, but here, let me help you hack and get money because they probably don't have any money anymore. Like they're out
Oh
of
no,
funds.
without the Republic to finance things, like money is
Yeah.
going to be super tight.
So what if he comes like Maz basically sends him over and is like, I'm gonna help you make ends meet, basically, and gets that all going.
I'd be into it.
yeah.
Again, I just really like Justin Theroux, so if they could put his face on a lot of things, I am okay.
Hmm.
I really do sound thirsty, like at all times.
That's okay. Everyone thinks it, just only some people actually say it. You know what I mean?
I mean, you stock this world with beautiful people, and you expect me to not appreciate it? Like, nah, man.
Nope, it's gonna happen.
And then factor on top of that, I'm bisexual, so like everyone is beautiful. It's just so much.
All I can think of is the Manson song, The Beautiful People. The Beautiful People.
I mean, that's literally what plays on repeat in my head anytime I go out in public. I'm like, oh my god, everyone is so beautiful.
But I actually wanted to ask you too about that. Did you think that Justin Theroux's character was the actual Codebreaker, or that Maz was referring to, or was it DJ?
Oh no, it was absolutely Justin Theroux because the whole point of the storyline is failure, and so the first failure that they really have is not getting the Master Codebreaker.
Gotcha.
I
They
mean,
and plus, why would Maz trust somebody who would betray them?
I think that I honestly, as soon as like the red plum bloom, I kept searching DJ like for a red plum bloom, like going maybe he's there, maybe it's him too, or like it was one of those things like appearances aren't what they seem. Like maybe that guy just had a red plum bloom for whatever reason, but then I kept trying to look on DJ to see if he secretly had one, and he didn't. And you're right, it is the moral of The Last Jedi is that you will fail. And it's what you do with your failure that defines who you are. And I think that is really encompassed with Luke and the ending, and also kind of with Holdo, where she basically sends everybody out and fails to save them and turns the ship, well, fails to, her plan that is supposed to save them fails epically because they managed to detect the little transports and looks at that and as opposed to trying to get them all to come back, tries to, figures out what to do with it, which is I will sacrifice myself and I will take down that ship.
You know what's really great is I think a lot of the theories that are emerging about well, maybe DJ really was the master codebreaker stems from the fans who really can't let go of the fact that this movie is about everyone failing. Instead of it just being oh, well, DJ was the master codebreaker, but he betrayed them. No, the story is that they failed to get the master codebreaker, and I think a lot of theories are stemming from that idea of fans not being able to handle failure as a theme in a Star Wars movie because we're so used to the dumbest of plans working out in some way.
Well,
Yeah.
how serious could you take the First Order as an organization and as a threat if they're able to be thwarted every time by this little dingy, and the Resistance, they are a terrorist cell, you know what I mean, but by this little poorly funded terrorist cell that they wouldn't be able to keep control. It would make no sense why the First Order is so powerful if this little group of ragtag people can take them down every single time. You have to establish the Order as a threat.
I mean, I completely agree with that. There was no reason why the plan for Canto Bight should succeed. You know? Because there were just so many moving parts, get to this planet, find this guy, escape with this guy, bring him here. And sure, maybe had they gotten Justin Theroux, he could have shot his way out of the situation they were in. He wouldn't have betrayed them. He would have found some way out of the situation, and everything would have gone just fine. But then you kind of think about the fact that, if Poe would have just shut up and not condoned this plan, everything would have gone so much better. Sure, Haldo would have ended up dying, and we wouldn't have completely destroyed some ships, in a really spectacular fashion.
I think
God.
what kind of on that is it's like the plan, they didn't, I'm like, there's a failure in Empire. Sorry, I had to figure out how to say this. In Empire Strikes Back, where they're going to go to Bespin, and it's going to be all good. They're going to be with Lando, and that turns out to be an epic failure. But almost all the times in the prequels, whenever anybody fails, they're failing upward. What's going on with this clone army? Oh, well, now we have a clone army.
Yep.
So I think fans are sitting here no, everything's supposed to go right and everything's supposed to be good. I'm like, yes, but we've all seen Empire. We all know that that's not the case, number one. Number two, you're not, that plan in any, you were to watch that in any movie and that happening, you'd be all over that can't be true, blah, 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 blah. Here's why that wouldn't work. Whereas now we're getting a movie where finally the improbable plan fails.
Exactly. Well, it creates stakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honest enough with myself to know that I was one of those fans who was expecting, Poe to, and see, here's the thing is I like Poe a lot, and so when I first saw the initial thing of can Poe get along with his new boss, I was like, well, Holdo's a villain. And so everything, and even though I knew her character from the Leia book, it was one of those things where I was like, well, what happened to you? Why are you being so awful, And I was really rooting for Poe the entire time, and then it wasn't until after the fact, and then a second viewing, where I was like, well, holy shit, Holdo is really awesome, and I really love that this movie does that to our expectations. We see a hero like Poe, and we know that he was a hero from The Force Awakens. He's the one who, took down Starkiller Base, at the end of it. So we feel like we're supposed to be rooting for him. And then it turns out he was wrong the whole time, and his actions are what ended up destroying a lot of the fleet. And, I mean, it's good character development for him. You see that he's learned at the end of the movie that you can't just rush into things, and you have to consider the human life factor of what's going on. But I just love that this movie really takes the idea of heroes and villains and says, do those exist, or are they just people who have their own motivations?
Exactly.
Yes. And that's part of what I love so much about The Last Jedi. It's ambiguity. No one and like no character is wholly good and no character is wholly bad. But
You take that back about Haldo. She is perfect.
well, that's true. Well, actually, speaking of Holdo, um, actually, this is a criticism I have not so much of the movie, but of with what Lucasfilm and Disney is doing in general is that they're making people or making it so that people have to read the books to fully understand what's going on. Like I read them all, but my husband doesn't, and he was the entire time like, "Who the hell is Holdo? Who is this woman? Why is she a bitch?" And I'm like, what is going on? Because this is not Luna Lovegood in space. No, it doesn't. If you just watch the movie, it doesn't explain why no one responds to Leia's code, and that's revealed, or Leia's distress code, and that's revealed in Bloodline. So a lot of the smaller things that add up to a whole lot more like, plot holes if you hadn't read the books. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Because I haven't read Bloodline, and I didn't know why nobody was responding to her.
It's because Leia lied to everyone about who her parents were.
It's just stupid. It's so stupid.
Oh yeah.
Like, calm down, man. Like, it's not like he sat there, like, burping her, bouncing him up and down on his knee, taking her to t-ball games. Like,
The thing is that it really is like, yes, biologically, Anakin Skywalker is Leia Organa's father. Half of his genetics is in her. But her father, that for all intents and purposes, is Bail Organa.
Indeed. But
Yeah.
if Leia had just come out and said that up front before she lied by omission for 23 years and waited until it was spread all over the news to respond to it, that makes Leia seem like she has something to hide.
Kind of on that, do we know if it was hers and Luke's decision jointly?
Yes. They chose to be very. Luke just kind of disappeared. After
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi, he kind of just disappeared and went off to do his own thing. And another criticism of The Last Jedi is Leia's use of the Force and that like she has no Force training. Well, in the books, she has a little bit of Force training, but they don't explain that. They just go, Leia's using the Force. We're expected to believe that she uses the Force without contextualizing it.
And I mean, there's also in the books, yes, she's learned how to use the Force in certain parts, but like Bloodline doesn't go into how she learned the Force from Luke. We don't know what's going on in between the Catalyst series and Bloodline yet. So for all we know, she does actually have some intensive Force training. And I wouldn't like. I know we talk about she sends Ben away and everything. It would be kind of nice if she learned to use the Force from Ben in like one of their weekly Skype calls. It's like, Mom, this is what I'm learning. You should try it too. And like, so she's learning with him in a way.
Aww, I would be so down for that.
that's adorable.
Um, yeah, but I mean, so for all we know, because it's Luke goes off and does his own thing, but he's probably sitting there like, I want to open up this school and have Jedi. I don't want to have it spread across the galaxy that I'm Darth Vader's son either. Like,
Yeah,
fuck
like
it.
how can people people ostracize Leia after this reveal? Like, how do you think people would have taken to their sons and daughters going off with Darth Vader's son?
Exactly.
It's a double-edged sword, and again, trying to bring it all back into The Last Jedi, unless you have read the books and or listened to the audiobooks, a lot of those are like left open and going, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. Strange. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Back to the Resistance plot.
I mean, that was kind of the Resistance plot.
Rose is amazing.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
I love Rose. I had so much wish fulfillment that was just fulfilled with Rose, and I love her so much. Because I worked with maintenance when I was in the military, and she got to stun Finn, and I have wanted to just do that to many an asshole flyer in my life. It's just like so good. It's like you go, you go. I love Rose. And she and John have so much chemistry. I could just watch them all day. They're just so goddamn cute.
They are.
I there was a part of me that always was kind of like standing Finrose before I even saw the movie. And I was just like, I don't know how this is going to play out. Like, I don't know if this is going to live up to my hopes and expectations. And then that I came out of that movie and all I could think was like, they did this more perfectly than I could, more perfectly. They did this as perfect as I could imagine, better than even. And oh my God, and I made a post on Tumblr about this, but I think the thing about Rose that breaks my heart the most is that even though she spent her time like idolizing Finn, and that was immediately destroyed when she realized he was trying to run, like she gains that admiration for him again because he helps her destroy Canto Bight, and he tries to bump up the Resistance's morale again, and he gets out on a skim speeder and he goes to fight and stuff like that, and like she really gains this admiration for him again, and then she tries to stop him from making a needless sacrifice by almost needlessly sacrificing herself. And so in that moment, like, you kind of get this sense that that Rose thinks that Finn is more important to the Resistance than she is, and that breaks my heart because like she really is kind of like the spirit that made Finn want to fight for the Resistance instead of just one person. And I love her so much. I have just so much love for her, and I hope she's okay. I hope she comes back in the next one.
That would be good.
I would be more than willing to bet that she's coming back in 9, because it was established that she and Finn have this connection, and absolutely I think Finn's going to get the girl and get his happy ending, because damn it, he deserves it.
That is the happy ending that would be good, and he cares a lot about Rose, and I think one of the things that gets me at the end is he's kind of surprised that she cares about him that much, and then he's surprised by how he feels. Like that's how I took the end, as to be like, oh well, he didn't get it. Like he was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Like I guess, all right, here we are. Cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think that kind of took Finn aback when she said that and then leaned up to kiss him, but it was so sweet.
I thought that was so, like, I agree that I think he was surprised by it because, like, even though he clearly has this, like, affection for Rey, and the visual dictionary makes it sound like Finn is, like, in love with Rey, which I think there could be some truth to that, but I just think it would be, a bad plot to have an entire movie about, like, Rose having a crush on Finn and then that turning into something deeper and her nearly sacrificing himself for him so she can confess her love, and then he's like, and now I'm with Rey. Like, I just don't foresee that being the message in Star Wars. And I really do think it's one of those things where like he and Rey have this like familial bond, like they've been through something together, and so they're like family. And I don't think anyone has ever really cared about Finn in that sort of way, in that, I love you sort of way, and I think that may have confused him quite a bit, not understanding that their bickering was to be crass, foreplay.
Well, and I think, okay, so we've talked about like John and Kelly have a good chemistry, but I think one of the things that the movie is going to be fighting against in the next one is John and Daisy have incredible chemistry, and you can see that in their hug. But I think you're right. I almost think that Finn would be in love with the idea of Rey, but in love with Rose herself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, loving the person versus loving the idea.
Yeah, Rey is the idea of this freedom that's going to help him and run with him and can take him out and do all this stuff. Whereas Rose is, yes, I'll do those things, but I'm also here to make sure that you understand that we're going to that we're being down to earth on this.
I think And here's one of the things I actually noticed when I went and saw it again today, was that the hug that Rey and Finn share at the end is very platonic. Um, like, they both have their arms wrapped around each other's upper bodies.
That's
Um,
true. Hmm.
and so, and just like from studying, body language and the like, it's a very platonic hug. Like, they're just really happy to see each other. It's like seeing your family after a long time. It's Luke and Leia what's the word I'm looking for? Reunion, part two, like, and then you have that scene on the Falcon where Rey is like watching Finn with Rose and she's smiling. Like, I think even though John and Daisy do have chemistry, like, they don't quite have the same kind of chemistry. I think that because they're so like best friends with each other and they don't have that, like, I don't know, how to explain it. Like, they just feel like family to me, not romantic interests. And so I do think like people are going to have to fight. I think JJ is going to have to fight against their chemistry, but not so much. I think especially when you compare all the chemistries, like, Daisy and Adam have incredible like sexual and romantic chemistry. And that isn't to say that, like, they should date in real life, because he's obviously very happily married. But he's just, I think Adam himself just kind of exudes this really sexual energy, and I think that's because he's a Scorpio. But he's like, I don't know, he's good at making things sexual. That's such a fucked up way to say it.
Right. I mean, he is, but because I was thinking, I was like, when he says like "follow me" to everybody in the TIE Fighters, I'm like, I will follow you. I'm like, that's so weird, but I'm just like, yes, where are you going? Don't care, following you.
I mean, some people just have that natural energy about them. It's something you really can't simulate. It's just something that some people have and some people don't. Is that a Scorpio thing? I don't know too much about. Is that a strong
Scorpios are supposed to be like the most sexual of the zodiac. Like, I remember when I was first learning about the zodiac, we found, we read that my friend Savannah is a Scorpio, and so we were like, Savannah likes to have sex. We're a bunch of dumb 12-year-olds. And so, like, that stuck with me for some reason.
And Kylo Ren's a Scorpio. So, okay.
Yeah, but he's a virgin.
Is that canon? Like,
It is canon, okay? It is canon, because when Ryan was talking about, see, we're like, let's talk about the Resistance plot, and it just always comes back to, like, fucking Raylo for me. But it is, I'll just cut this out and we can talk about it later, but we can discuss it now. Anyway, Kylo Ren is absolutely, no, I'm going to leave this in, fuck that. Anyway, Ryan was talking about how he was, about how he crafted, like, the Force Bond scenes, and how what he really wanted was them talking, and how he couldn't have them face to face because they would fight, and he couldn't have one of them tied up because, personally, I think that'd be a little too kinky. And then, like, the interviewer suggested that they could make out, and Ryan was like, they could make out, but then they wouldn't be talking, and that's what I needed. And later, in that same interview, he mentions that Adam asked him, has Kylo Ren ever kissed a girl before? And Ryan's like, yeah, I'm sure he's played, like, Spin the Saber before at Jedi camp. The fact that they have to debate so heavily whether or not Kylo Ren has even kissed a girl, it pretty much means, like, Virgin Ben Solo is canon.
Well, and I mean, think of it this way. This is Ben Solo. Everybody knows who his parents are. Everybody knows who his uncle is. So even if he was like, yes, I want to kiss a girl or a female or a male or whatever at Jedi camp, and it's going to be great. Can you imagine them being like, okay, we can kiss, but literally your entire family will hate me if we break up, and I don't want to do that. And can you just tell me about your dad or like your mom, or like it goes into this whole thing where he's probably super happy to be Kylo Ren because Ben Solo has so many expectations on him and is like, he's probably asked about his family so often that, Kylo Ren doesn't have a family. He's like, yes, worship me.
Oh, and that's one of the things I noticed, is that Kylo Ren and Ben Solo and everyone, he's always connected to someone. Like, Han talks about how he has too much Vader in him, and then, you know, and then Snoke in this one is like, you have your father's heart, and like he just keeps getting related to other people. And so like the idea of him breaking out of his legacy is so hard. Like I can totally imagine why he wants to let the past die, because that's all that's ever been there for him is I have this famous mother and famous father and famous uncle, and oh, now I also have a famous grandfather. Like, who the fuck am I
Well,
in all of this?
he's always had the famous grandfather because it was Anakin Solo then.
Oh,
Or
that's
Skywalker.
Anakin Skywalker, yeah.
It's like
So, no, I mean, you're completely right.
I just want my calligraphy set and everyone to leave me alone.
Oh, my poor little scholar. We should maybe go back to the Resistance.
Oh, what did you guys think of they call them the crystal critters, but the Vulptex? They're just so cute.
I loved them, even though, like, at one part I thought that they were assholes because they, like, ran to this rock slide. We're like, peace. Like, that one straight up looked at Poe like, hey, follow me. And then it, like, ran off. And then it just leads to this rock, and it kind of looks at him like, here's our exit. And Poe's like, I can't go through the fucking rocks, you piece of shit. And, like, maybe it was force sensitive, like, because I still think they're made of kyber.
I read
They aren't, but like that's what I wanted.
I could have sworn I read somewhere that the Vulptices, I think is the plural form, they're somehow in tune with the Force.
Well, then it's I mean that's kind of what I think it was. Is also, how does Rey not just fall down that cliff? That was such an awkward angle of a cliff. Like there was not a stair step. I just see the little Vulptix like run up the cliff, and she's already halfway down, and I'm like, there's no way you did that. It's impossible.
The Force.
Force.
I thought that about the Fathiers at Canton Bight when they're going up the cliff. I'm like, what? How are they able with hooves to scale a cliff? That logic, that doesn't make sense.
The Force.
I don't know.
I'm just gonna keep saying the Force, and one of these times, I will be right.
I mean, it's Star Wars. You could just say, the Force willed it.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Nope.
Force do what it want.
So, have either of you played or watched the Battlefront 2 DLC?
No, I've been meaning to watch the like movie on YouTube of the cutscenes and stuff.
Am I wrong in just the First Order takes over? Like they win essentially, and they're in complete control of the galaxy.
Yeah, I remember seeing that Zay, is that her name? Eden and Dell's daughter?
Yeah.
I think Zay is looking at a map or something of where all the First Order fleets are among the galaxy, and it's just everywhere. Like, they've seriously taken over. Like, there's some part of me that almost wonders if this is going to end really badly, and we're gonna have to have 10, 11, 12.
I mean, the First Order is either going to implode because the Supreme Leader is imploding, precious baby that he is sometimes, or the Resistance really is going to be completely and utterly reborn, but as something entirely new, because the Republic is gone. So they have to reestablish that. But I think the end of 9, no matter what, is going to be a very bittersweet end, because basically the only way without 10, 11, and 12 is that the galaxy will literally be left in shambles, at least for an overarching government.
I can't believe we're really going to have like a Horrors of War theme in our Star Wars. Like, we've already got it, and if they really end the trilogy with the galaxy like in shambles, that's going to be nutso.
Well, this is pure Reddit speculation. I think it was the Star Wars speculation subreddit where someone on there claimed that they had seen like drafts of Colin Trevorrow's stories or his pitches, and again, like this could be complete bollocks because it's Reddit, but the endings were really bleak. Like everyone died in these drafts of Like the only two people who lived were Finn and Poe, and everyone else just kicked the dust or kicked it.
So what
And
you're telling me is Trevorrow ships Finn Poe.
I mean, doesn't everyone else?
Even Kelly Marie Tran ships Finn Poe. That
Um,
sounds like a huge, like, fuck you to Star Wars, though, doesn't it? Like, hey guys, thanks for giving me this movie. I'm completely rebooting your franchise by killing everyone.
and like
Exactly.
the central theme has always been hope. So even if they're gonna do bittersweet, like they can do a bittersweet ending that still has a fragment of hope that it can be reborn.
I I think the other thing about it is killing off everybody is the way is it's also they won't do it. And the reason why you won't do it is because yes, this is the Skywalker saga and I mean even Disney with wanting to get out of it will want to leave it open for more Skywalkers. It just happens to be not a Skywalker.
Anakin?
But
Yeah.
part of that is going to be what happens with the resistance.
Yeah, I mean, if the reason nobody answered her call was because, they're mad at her for lying, because first off, your father was Darth Vader and your son is Kylo Ren. Like, I think people are probably side-eyeing you pretty hard right now. Like, clearly you got some bad blood running through you. I disagree, obviously. But, I mean, I think it's a natural conclusion for people to come to. And so it's one of those things where it's like, how does the rebellion rebuild? Leia says we have all the pieces we need, but where? Like, I'm pretty sure you knocked all your puzzle pieces underneath the couch and now the vacuum ate them.
Exactly.
And I think, the biggest problem for the resistance right now is Leia sent out her personal distress signal, which, if it's the same one as the comics, is like, what is it, Naboo, Endor, Ben, and then some numbers. And I'm like, oh, my heart. Um, Nobody's answering her call because what protection are they going to have to help the resistance? There's no more Republic. It's just this little band of people led by Leia who they might not trust. So, there's no reason for people to care. And does she have money? Does she have the ability to do anything? Nobody knows. And now you have the First Order that's basically taken over. We've seen that constantly. And people are probably like, I don't have to do this. I don't have to listen. I can do my own thing.
Well, it even leaves them in a stickier spot because Carrie's not going to be around for 9, and what are they going to do?
Well, I mean, you kind of have to wonder if people won't follow Leia, but they will follow Poe.
That's true, because I mean, Poe's entire character arc in The Last Jedi was setting him up to learn the important lessons to lead.
Like, I think they were probably going to make that happen anyway. Carrie's death just forces them to do it in a different way.
It's true. I think they were going to do something else just with Carrie in general. They can't now.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll ever, like, be told what they were planning on doing with Carrie. But I wonder if the reason Trevorrow's spec script got so dark was because he went from Carrie's death and just went for it.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. On one hand, I would very much like to see what they had thought about for 9. And on the other hand, I almost never wanted to see the light of day, or at least until after 9 is out for a while. Summer 2020, they're like, by the way, this is what 9 was going to be. Or it's like it's a feature on the Blu-ray or something. Um, because I don't want, and I don't think the fans should see what could have been and then compare it to what is because of extenuating circumstances.
Indeed.
Yeah, I really don't. I want to know what it is, but I feel like that's a 20 years later sort of thing where they reveal what the plot would have been.
Yeah.
Like if you reveal that with episode 9, I I feel like you're gonna have a lot of people that are like, yeah, fuck this. I wanted that movie. Well, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher died, so we don't get that movie.
She
I
died,
wonder if
and
Trevorrow would have stayed on had Carrie not passed. I mean, I'm glad he's gone. I think he's garbage, but like,
I think it was I have a feeling that it was a long time coming and just presenting the hey, here's what it would be without Carrie and all this stuff and pitching it. I think, you know, Kathleen Kennedy basically saw what happened. His letting go was before or after the Solo one.
After, if I remember correctly.
after.
Yeah.
So she basically saw that the press, like people were okay with letting the people go for letting the two directors go for Solo. So I think that she was like, oh, good. Now I can really fire this guy.
Well, wasn't he initially, I mean, this is all speculative hearsay, but didn't wasn't Trevorrow hired because Kathleen Kennedy's husband was friends with him?
Oh my God. I hope that's not true. I
That's
can't deal with nepotism.
that's what I've heard.
Exactly.
I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, obviously, regardless, even if they were friends, he didn't stick. And she decided to nip it in the bud before, like Solo, where they'd filmed 90% of the movie, fired the two directors, and then had to bring in a new director who allegedly reshot 90% of the movie.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing that he reshot more than they were expecting. I was like, ooh.
I mean, I really hope that alleviates some of the concerns about Alden's acting, because I feel like I think the reason they brought in the acting coach for Alden was based on like Lord and Miller's bad directing or bad, ideas for the movie. I don't know.
I
Ron Howard actually gives me hope. Ron Howard is pretty much essentially the only reason I'm excited to see the movie, because I think he's got a good kind of like feel-good director sort of streak to him.
I have a feeling. I think didn't Aldrin request the acting coach?
Well, he probably requested it specifically because the Lord and Miller version of the script he was given was I remember they said that Lord and Miller wanted to do a lot of improvisation, and that's not what he signed up for. Like they wanted to
Yeah.
make it like a funny, like buddy cop kind of movie, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm an actor,"
Not a
and
comedian.
so yeah, and so I think he requested it in order to get their style of directing down. Conversely, the acting coach could have been requested by virtue of him wanting to get the mannerisms of Harrison Ford down better, like someone who could really help him analyze his mannerisms and get those down rather than him just like watching the movies and trying to get it down.
Fair
I
enough.
believe Ewan McGregor did the same thing to get Alec Guinness's stuff down.
And I think it goes to show that he knew what was going on, and maybe Aldrin was like, I know that I'm leading this thing, and I'm not getting the direction and the help that I need, and this is. I wonder if he was trying to find a way to say, I don't know if I can work with these directors without saying I can't work with these directors or they're not going to be able to give the movie that you need. So he's like, how about an acting coach? How about this? And like trying to do all the workarounds that he has available to him.
Well, supposedly Alden was the one who kind of whistle blew on how bad the production was actually going. Like, it was Alden's complaint that caused them to look into the dailies and see that Lord and Miller weren't doing the job they wanted them to do.
Well, weren't they even doing
So,
like half the work? I know we did an episode on it way back, but like, weren't they only
it was our
doing like,
first episode.
yeah, they were only doing like half the amount of dailies that they were supposed to do, and they weren't shooting the amount of footage, and they weren't shooting for the entire day, and it was just a big jumbled mess.
Well,
Yeah,
they
they
would
weren't
like,
getting the coverage they needed, which was going to fuck them in post. Like, they would not have had the shots they needed to make an appropriate film.
and I think it was also like they said that that was how they did direction and like screw everybody else basically.
It's like, I'm an artist, and I'm gonna do like, no, you have to meet deadlines, you have to report to your boss.
I
Exactly.
also think that hiring a director to do a movie that's different from the thing they're famous for is a risky decision. And so while Trevorrow and Lord and Miller and whatnot are good at their respective things, I suppose, Lord and Miller did the Lego movie, right? Isn't that what they were like known for?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, I guess maybe they are kind of going for a like a not slapstick, but like a more
Lighthearted.
humorous kind of, yeah, lighthearted. That's a great word. A plus. Um, Going for a more lighthearted movie in Solo, and so Lord and Miller were good options. Um, but I think it's pretty clear that Lord and Miller work best with improvisation because they work with like Chris Pratt and Will Arnett and like people who are funny
And
and not.
people who are trained to do it. Like,
Yeah.
so you bringing in an actor who, I mean, I don't know, I've only seen him in Beautiful Creatures, which he was not bad in it. He was not good in it, and I mean, it that movie was what it was. I'm just gonna say that. I mean, it's a movie based off of a YA novel, and it's again, it's not bad, it's not good, it is what it is. It could have been worse. I'll put that out there.
I mean, that's a glowing review.
I was entertained. It wasn't as bad as The Host, which I definitely did see. Which people are gonna be like, that's not YA. I'm like,
That's a step
but
higher. Of course, it's YA.
it's actually in the sci-fi section. But anyway, he's not bad. But I think putting him in the spot of, okay, now you have to improvise is unfair to him because he like Will Arnett, Chris Pratt, they've done their homework basically. They are comedians and improvisers by trade, whereas he's like, I have done this. I do not do these things. Not saying that I won't do these things, but
No, it's forte.
yeah. And I feel bad. Like I would feel bad all of a sudden being told like now you have to do this thing that people train for, and you're like, oh, but it's not what I signed up for.
It would be like asking Adam Driver to do improv. He's an amazing actor, but he just doesn't do improv.
Yeah, he has to get into his character real hard. Like, and
Yeah.
I've never seen Alden in a thing. Like, I've not watched one single thing he's been in.
I think
But I'm also,
he was also in
Hail Caesar.
yeah, that
yep,
one.
haven't seen it.
I've seen clips of
Um,
I've seen clips of Hail Caesar, and he's decent. He's not horrible. He's not amazing, but he's good. And I think that if he does a good job as Han, it would really boost him. You know what I mean?
I just hope the haters don't like. I don't know. I just don't want the angry fanboys to like come for him just by virtue of like them opposing the idea of a Han Solo movie existing without Harrison Ford just playing a 18-year-old Han Solo with no explanation.
I mean,
Well,
haters gonna hate.
I mean, then they
Oh
can
no.
they can give Harrison Ford a seven-figure paycheck and finance their own movie and figure it out because it's what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I'm sure after specifically requesting that Han Solo die, Harrison would just love to be in some sort of fan film.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Star Wars Axanar.
So the Resistance?
I mean, what else do we really have with the Resistance plot? Like, we have Rose doing her thing, and I mean, I would have liked to see more from Paige, but I don't think that the movie would have allowed time for that.
I'll say the original cut was like 3.5 hours, and even they brought it down to 2.5 hours, and it still didn't feel like there was enough time for everything that happened.
This really should have been a quadrilogy. Like, we should have gotten like 7 through 10 and given Ryan the middle two.
Agreed.
That would have been cool.
Would have broken Star Wars tradition so hard, I think it would have pissed people off, but I don't care.
Uh,
Um, I watched Bright last night, which, while an incredibly problematic movie that really shouldn't have gotten made, um, Veronica, I don't know how to say her last name, but Paige was in the movie, and she was a vision.
I have not seen that movie. I'm holding out for The Shape of Water to show in my local theater.
Oh, I don't think they're going to show it at mine, and I'm really upset.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's see. Resistance stuff. What were some of your favorite moments of the Resistance plot? And no fair saying Holdo's kamikaze moment, because that's everyone's favorite.
Leia slapping Poe.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember like all of our speculation on like why she would slap Poe, and we're like, it's because he's gonna talk shit on Ben, and we were like,
You're
we're
demoted.
And then
wrong
it
now.
and then it happened, and we're all like, oh well, fair enough.
For all the talk of Leia slapping Poe, I did not expect Donal slapping John.
True.
That I did not expect.
I mean, I did. Here's the thing I hate about Donald Gleason is that he is so goddamn nice in real life. Like, I hate watching the interviews because I'm like, this is not the same person. Like, and I don't think you have to be a bad person to play a bad person, but it's just so night and day. I just can't believe that that sweet little Irish angel is the one playing this asshole. Like, it breaks my brain.
Acting.
I acting. I mean, I still love
Yeah.
that on the red carpet somebody yelled at him Hufflepuff, and he was like, "No, Gryffindor."
Aww.
I was
Poor George
like,
Weasley.
"Aw,
Aww,
evil Weasley,
you must be a Weasley.
red hair, hand-me-down clothes." All right.
Um,
Phasma Finn fight. I
oh my, we have not talked about that, and I think we are going to take this moment to do so.
So the Phasma Finn fight, I have thoughts on it. I thought it started out great. I did not like how it ended. And not that Phasma died. I mean, she was gonna die. She's the Boba Fett of the new trilogy. She's gonna die. And we
And
love.
so she's going to come back.
That's true, but I think and I don't know if she'll come back or not. But if she comes back, it's gonna be because everyone loves Gwen Christie, not so much because everyone loves Phasma.
Well, and like I mean, they left it open because her armor is like so amazing and can't be penetrated. Like she could conceivably survive that fire thing in her armor and just have like no eye where there's the hole or whatever. Like she's incredibly scarred too because maybe that should be this trilogy subheading. Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, everybody gets a scar.
Star Wars.
um, I think it did really well, and then it just sort of ended abruptly.
Well, I mean, you'll know there was the deleted scene, right?
No.
No.
So one of the deleted scenes was an extension to the Finn Phasma fight, wherein, excuse me, wherein the stormtroopers kind of run up because of the Finn Phasma fight, and Finn starts trying to convince them to like turn against Phasma. Which is why I think a Stormtrooper rebellion might take place in Episode 9, because we have those hints of it starting here, but like the dice, I don't know if you can continue a plot thread that was removed from the movie without it feeling a little bit heavy-handed. But Finn like tries to convince the Stormtroopers to turn against Phasma, and it looks like they're maybe kind of considering it, and I do think that this may be the scene with the princes that got cut out. And then Phasma just kind of like shoots all of them in like this like Western movie kind of style. Just shoots all 6 of them before they even have a chance to think about turning against her, and then the fight continues. So I think that could have made it longer. I think that could have made it like a more interesting sort of I'm great at finding my words today apparently.
It would have been more engaging because I'm listening to the track, Chrome Dome. That track is awesome. It has so much energy. And the first time I saw it, when I saw the Finn Phasma fight, I'm like, oh, here it is. Here it is. Yes. Sign me the fuck up. And and then we got it, and it was like 20 seconds, and it was over. It was kind of like the Obi-Wan and Maul duel on Tatooine that people felt kind of gypped. And I'm like, that's kind of how it felt a little bit because like it was built up, and it's this big, huge moment where Finn has to confront his past, and that was it. That was disappointing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess part of my problem with the idea of Phasma dying is even though she's the Boba Fett, she is Finn's antagonist. And so I'm curious as to how that's going to play out for his character, because everyone knew that we were kind of going to gear up for a Finn Phasma something or other. And now it's just kind of over. Like, he doesn't have that looming over his head anymore. And I just wonder what they're going to do with his character as far as antagonism goes, because you have to have an antagonist. And so I just wonder if, like, now that his plot has led him to be part of the Resistance, like, officially, if his antagonist is now the First Order as a whole. Like, if he's just become, like, a part of the Resistance to where his antagonist is whoever the Resistance is antagonized by.
Which makes it kind of boring, actually.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Because giving him this one personal antagonist to rise up against, who was like, I wanted you to be the next me, basically. You were on the fast track to be an officer, and blah, 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 and you were going to rise through the ranks, and you were, my personal failure, basically. I think they should go back to that.
I agree. Like, Finn's arc seems kind of incomplete if Phasma dies for episode 9, because, like, what is he going to do if he's not going to do this stormtrooper insurrection, which needs to happen? That would bring Finn's arc, a full, like, it would be complete. It would be a nice, beautiful, wonderful, just circle of character development, of liberating all these other stormtroopers. But if he had to face Phasma at the same time and help the other stormtroopers realize that they have the ability to make the choice, that would make it all the more, what's the word? I don't want to say complete, because I've said complete like 3 times, but it would make it more complete, fulfilling, or satisfactory.
I think satisfactory is a good one. Satisfying, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, you're right. It feels like stunted right now. Like, and really, I do think this is like the biggest problem with having multiple directors, is that completing the arcs is hard because different directors care about different characters. JJ clearly cared more about a Resistance storyline. Ryan clearly cares more about the Force storyline, and it's just kind of like how do you follow through character arcs when different directors care about different people, you know?
Definitely.
Well, the answer is your director cares about that, but your story team focuses on what you want to focus on. And yes, the director can do that and what have you, but you're ultimately answering to a story team. So even if the director wants to focus on the Resistance or the director wants to focus on the Force, you are getting a balance in your storytelling anyway.
Well, but I mean, that's the thing, is the plots are balanced. Like, we still get both sides of a story, but, like, the character arcs kind of fall off for me, you know? Like, Finn's story doesn't seem like it really went anywhere, except for when he's fighting Phasma. That was the one victory he had, you know?
And even that victory was a fluke.
And it felt really hollow because it's only the second movie. And so I agree with one of these articles that said that The Last Jedi felt more like a final film than the middle film, because there was a lot of big bads that were taking out. There was character deaths and whatnot. And so it becomes this kind of thing of like, well, where do you go from something that already felt like an ending?
I really hope that JJ, the writer of Lost, is up to this.
Yeah, I try not to fault him for Lost, you know, because he really did only, like, focus on the first season. Like, he's great at starting things, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why they picked him.
Can he finish it?
Well, that's why they picked him for 7, though. I mean, he's really good. That is his strength, at starting things. And we could I'm going to save most of this for our episode when we talk about the Force plot, but JJ and Ryan wrote the stories at the same time. So JJ knew all the answers that were going to be revealed in 8, but he chose instead to do what JJ does, which is big red herrings and make people go, "What's this? What's that?" It's like Nightmare Before Christmas. Like, what's this? What's this? What's going on?
That's where my brain went to.
And JJ's really, really good at that. But especially now that like the second half to his story that Ryan told, all those answers that they made and that they created have been told, like where do you take it from here? And it's like the person who's with him that wrote Justice League, and I'm like, you don't really like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are moments to Justice League I like, and so I'm trying to be, like, hopeful. I don't know. And the thing about it is, like, I think the hardest part about JJ coming back is I really, people are like, oh, JJ's going to fix Rey's parentage, or JJ's going to fix this part of the story, or JJ's going to fix that part of the story. And in my mind, I'm like, because one of the admins in my group was like, do you think that JJ is going to go back to the story that he was envisioning before Ryan took over, or do you think he's going to just go with what Ryan's doing? And I thought that was an odd question because JJ never had a particular vision for 8 and 9 other than the basic skeleton of the plot. Like, he did 7, and then he had no investment in the series after that other than being executive producer. So, sure, I guess he had ideas, but I don't think he was ever like super invested in who Rey's parents are going to be because he didn't think that was going to be his decision to make. And so I think it's going to be difficult. I don't think it's going to be a thing where he's trying to change what Ryan did. Because he never had an investment in it beyond 7. So, I don't know. I just think it's going to be one of those things where he's got to figure out a compelling story, and I really hope he talks to Ryan about it, because I think Ryan had some good ideas and probably had more thoughts on how to end this than... And I just think it'd be really fucked up if they're just sitting here trying to write each other into corners.
Yeah. Well, I read somewhere that Ryan wrote a treatment for 9.
I think that was thrown out. I thought that was like a Trevorrow era,
Gotcha. Okay.
a Trevorrow era thing that was happening, and then once that got like thrown out, Trevorrow tried to write his own script, then he got fired. Now JJ has it, and Ryan has not much to do with it. I'm sure they talk, obviously, like, hey, when you did this, what did you have in mind? Like, I see you set up this theme. Where were you envisioning it going? But I don't think it's like...
Well, like, JJ knew some of the answers, though. Like, JJ knew the answers, like the big one that everyone's going, who are Rey's parents? He knew that. And he even tells us that in 7. Like, the answer is said in 7. And people are like, no, I don't want it. I don't want that answer. I don't like that answer. She's going to be related to Luke. She's going to be related to Han. She's going to be related to Leia. Even though, like Maz says, clear as day, whoever you're waiting for on Jakku, they're never coming back.
Yep, I completely agree, and that's the thing is I think that JJ knew from the get-go that Rey's parents were nobodies, and that's why he was able to tell Daisy that yeah, Rey's parents are nobodies, but she wants them to be somebodies. That way she could play Rey with that motivation of like, my parents are important, I swear they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I don't think he actually cared about what kind of nobodies they were. Like, I think Ryan was definitely like, yeah, they were alcoholics who abandoned you. Sucks. No one loves you except Kylo Ren and Finn. I don't want to leave Finn out of this because Finn does love Rey.
It's platonic.
But I mean, that's the thing is I love that there are different kinds of love that people can have. I love my friends a lot. I love my family a lot. But the love I have for my boyfriend is completely different,
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Do we really have anything much else to say on the Resistance? Because I think the bulk, like we're even veering off into it in this episode a little bit on the Force plotline, which has the most controversy, and I think people have more to complain about or more to rave about on the Force side of the plot than with the Resistance side. It's really, really good, or it kind of drags, and there's really no in between.
Yeah, I mean, I I like the Resistance plot. I think that for what it is good. Um, but it doesn't have other than what we've said about like how are they going to rebuild the Resistance and all that. Like it doesn't have as far-reaching as implications for the rest of the trilogy as the Force plot does. Which is to say, I actually think there's room for us to divide the Force plot up into two separate things, which would be Luke and how he relates to the Force and everyone within that, and then Reylo in specific. Because the Force plot really did kind of take over the movie, which I personally don't mind because that's where my bread and butter really goes to. Even, without the shippy aspect, like I care more about the fantasy aspect than the space aspect. And that's why I really hope that Rian Johnson's new trilogy has to do with the Force and not war or something. But yeah, I think I'm sure that at some point, in a couple of weeks, we'll do like the Last Jedi, wrap up sort of thing where we'll talk about other stuff, and maybe on subsequent viewings we'll have different opinions on the Resistance plot and whatnot. But for right now, I think the general consensus and how we feel is that it was okay. It wasn't the best plot that's ever been in Star Wars, and it has a good message, but it was done a little awkwardly.
Very, very, very much agreed. And I think one of the things that people, and I find myself doing this too, is Star Wars. I mean, they're all good movies. Minus the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones for me, but they're all great movies, and I would still watch, the Resistance plotline as a movie and be a good, entertaining movie. But I think Star Wars has a tendency to raise the bar so much as to what's considered good that people tend to get a little jaded and people tend to get a little spoiled. So when they have something that's not quite as, oh my god, and engaging, they just have a tendency to complain. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I,
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that this whole thing is they tried to do something very big and grandiose with the Resistance plot, but it really did get overshadowed by everything else and by the Jedi plot, which isn't, I mean, it's not to say that that's bad or good, but I do think that even some of it's lacking. It's not, you can tell it's not the main plot and it wasn't where people's hearts were.
Yep. I mean, I can I can kind of tell that like with us, like we're talking about the Resistance and like we can go into it and the importance of it, but even us, we just kind of like trail off and we end up distracted by other conversations.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yep.
like let's get back to the thing that we really want to talk about.
I don't think we're alone in the idea that the Resistance storyline wasn't as engaging as it could be. And I know it makes us sound like dirty Reylo fangirls to like keep trailing off and talking about Rey and Ben Solo or some other movie or whatnot, but like I feel like the actual brunt of the plot was that everything kind of failed and that sucks. Um, and that, Poe should have minded his own damn business. And that's the extent of what we really get from it.
Yeah, and how are they going to fix the Leia thing with Nine? That's what really left
Yeah.
me. Like, how are they going to fix this hike? I thought that they would reshoot it. You know what I mean? But
I mean, I have my own ideas on how to do it while continuing the story, because I'm a dirty fan fiction writer and I'm going to write it. I personally think that the best way to handle Leia is to have the First Order attack a Resistance base, and when Kylo realizes that his mother is on the base, freak out, try to stop it, but it ends up, she ends up getting killed in the attack anyway, and it shows Hux and the rest of the First Order just how unhinged and not really dedicated to, destroying everything that Kylo really is, which leads to Hux becoming the big bad after he tries to overthrow Kylo, which I think is clearly foreshadowed in The Last Jedi when you see Hux's face cast in shadow at the very end of the movie to show his duplicitous nature.
absolutely. Well, I didn't know if we were including like the First Order with the Force plotline or with the Resistance plotline, but it kind of bleeds over into both. Absolutely,
I,
Hux is going to be the big bad or part of Kylo's fallout from the First Order. Well, I think that pretty much concludes our discussion of the Resistance segment of The Last Jedi. And next we have planned is to talk about in depth with Luke, Kylo, Rey, and somewhat a little bit with Snoke, because he kind of plays into that, essentially the whole Force plotline. It's so big that it kind of just, it needs its own episode, or else this episode, again, would be way too long on its own. So until next time, you can find us on Tumblr at councilofthewills.tumblr.com. You can email us at councilofthewills@gmail.com, and you can find us on YouTube and SoundCloud. So until the next episode, I'm Jane.
I'm Jen.
I'm Amber.
May the Force be with you.